Just like the street lights lit this town, like a fire in a blaze, gotta burn it down. Can't be afraid to leave this out. We got this far, don't know how. I see danger in your eyes. They know we'll burn down the night. Coming just like the sunrise. You know that we gonna let it rain. Tonight we gonna let it rain. Tonight we gonna let it rain. Just like the sunrise, we gonna let it rain. Just like a spark that's breaking out. Can't make a stop, can't turn back now. We know that there's no room for doubt. No, we can't turn back now. I see danger in your eyes. They know we'll burn down the night. Coming just like the sunrise. You know that we gonna let it rain. Tonight we gonna let it rain. Tonight we gonna let it rain. Just like the sunrise, we gonna let it rain. Hello, hello. Wow, I haven't been talking much today, I guess. How is everybody doing? Welcome into today's live. I'm a little froggy for some reason, and I'm not sure why. Probably because I haven't really been talking out loud other than to the animals today. They've been my best friends today. That's usually who my friends are during the day. That's who I talk to the most is the dogs. I'm going to turn my mic up just a tad bit. Hopefully you guys can hear me okay. How's everybody doing? How's everybody doing today? It's Thursday. We are one step closer to Friday and almost to the weekend. Hopefully the weekend's going to be nice. Y'all, am I seeing? There is a banana peel. Is that a banana peel in the tree? My window's open. Like in my backyard, it looks like there's a banana peel up in the tree. Okay, I'll have to take a picture of that and show it to y'all because that's weird. That's just weird. Where did that come from? Hey Dawn, hey Miriam, welcome in. Hey Mary Beth, how are you doing? Hey, Just Breathe. I love that name. Sometimes you just need to just breathe. Hey Sailor, how you doing? Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Catherine's in here. Classic One's here. It's good to see you guys. Reba's cleaning and crocheting, as usual, I'm sure. Ashley Higgins, where were you last night? I needed you, girl. We were going through the defense's filings, and I was like, if I don't know what's going on, I'm going to ask Ashley because I know you were reading the filings along with me. You were actually ahead of me, so. Hey, Petunia. I don't know if I said hey to Catherine, but hello, Catherine. Welcome in. Hey, Andy. I know, right? Feeling froggy. It's time to leave. That's what I'm saying. My throat will be fine in just a moment. It's starting to work now. It's starting to work. I know you can't see me today. You can just see my picture today. I'm gonna be on tonight, maybe. I don't know. What are you smoking? The good stuff. The good stuff. I know, right? That little banana. That's what it looks like. I mean, I'm looking right at it. I'm like, what the hell is that thing? Hey, open mind perspectives. Hey, against all logic. Ooh, what panel were you on, Ashley? What kind of panel? What was it about? I'm curious. Was it like one of those like low cow kind of panels? Because I could see you tearing it up on one of those. I could, because you're just so witty. You're so witty with it. I could just see you being on one of those, like, just telling people how it is, just telling them how it is. So I do have a sale going on at my boutique. If you're not aware, I do own a boutique, Poppy and Ari. It's a women's clothing store. We sell clothing, jewelry, accessories, house, all the things that you would want. And I'll put the link in the chat for that. But we do have a summer sale going on right now. So everything in the store is 20% off. And all you have to do is at the end of your shopping journey, when you go to checkout, just click in where it says promotional code and put in capitals summer sale. So I'll put in, it's just www.poppyandari, but I spell it different than most people because, I have to be different. So I will put it in the chat and it'll be going through the chat as well. So, hey, Nikki, welcome in. Good morning. Mary Beth's at work, but she's listening in. I love that. So if you, and also if you'd like to support the channel, you can always do that through donations, super chats, memberships, PayPal, or Cash App. They're all appreciated and they help the channel grow. A free way to help is to just watch my videos, share them as much as you can, and hit that like button. Also, if you're watching on a replay, comment below. That always helps the engagement. So we'll go ahead and we'll get into it. We have been going through the defense's motions and responses to the state's documents from last week. So we went over them last night and we're going to go over the rest of them today. Basically, what we're doing is reading through the documents so that we can see what the state is going to say in its reply, because that's where we've been finding out all of the new information on Bryan Kohberger. So we have a few left that we'll go ahead and we'll get through today, and then we can start on the state's responses on our next live. And I'm sure that they're great. I'm sure that they're great. Missing 14-year-old. Oh no. Oh, wow. I didn't really cover the Summerwells case. I think I covered it, like I did like 2 parts to it, just to get like the baseline story out there, and then I didn't. Not right now, not to Canada as of right now. If it will let you put the address in, then I can send it. Yeah, I have to look into it, but I'm pretty sure that if you can put the address in, it'll let you send it. I need to look into that though, because I need to do international shipping now that we're on, YouTube. So, because we have a lot more people, we have people on YouTube. You guys are mostly the people that shop from my store because I talk to you guys about it more than anybody else. I used to, sorry, I used to do like TikToks and all that kind of stuff. And I have a TikTok for Poppy and Ari, and I have an Instagram if you guys ever want to check out the reels and all the videos I did. But yeah, yes, of course. Yeah, so we're gonna go through that tonight, Ashley. I saw that. Well, I saw some information on it, and I was like, "Whoa," because they're going to try to use his academic papers against him, I guess. So I have a bunch of tabs up for tonight, and I have some tabs up for today. And I also have I just have tabs everywhere. So let me close out of this one, and let's go over here real quick. Actually, let me put this so you guys will have the chat. Sorry. I want you guys to be able to have the live chat afterwards, and I forgot to put it on. I'm usually a little better at this, but we're doing it during the day, we'll have that. Oh, but the live chat is on. Okay. So I'm going to customize just membership or not membership, sorry, subscribers to 2 minutes. That way it helps the chat because I don't have any mods today. My mod is working. She's working her real job, her big girl job. So I may not be back for tonight for a live because I do have an early appointment tomorrow. But if I do come back, it may be around 8:15 p.m. instead of 9:15. So just make sure you have the bell on your alert. You're alerted with the bell and when I come on. So Let's go through the last few documents we have left. But before we do that, let's get caught up on what we read last night. Basically, this is the defense for Idaho suspect questions credibility of witness ahead of trial. So this is basically what we were kind of talking about last night as well.
Idaho students murdered back in 2022. The lawyers for the suspect, his name is Bryan Kohberger, are strongly questioning the credibility of a key witness. That information came out in court papers yesterday as both sides present arguments ahead of the trial, which, by the way, is scheduled in August. Jonathan Bigliotti has more.
Several hours after Kaylee Gonzalez, Madison Mosion, Xander Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin were found stabbed to death in their off-campus home, their surviving roommate called 911.
Oh, and they saw some man in their house last night.
Prosecutors say that witness described seeing a man with bushy eyebrows, and that this selfie Kohberger took matches that description. But in newly released court documents, defense attorneys seek to block that testimony, calling it prejudicial and arguing the witness, in her own words, says she was probably very drunk and tired when she saw the intruder at 4 a.m. CBS News legal analyst Jessica Levinson.
They're arguing that the witness description is unreliable and that it amounts to a false identification, and that coupled with the selfie, that it creates a real problem of an implied identification that didn't actually occur.
The defense also accuses detectives of leading the witness when showing them a picture of a ski mask, which the witness then drew.
The defense is trying to get a lot of the state's evidence thrown out. But when it comes to whether or not the witness is credible, that's really a question of how much weight a jury wants to give that evidence, not whether or not they can hear it at all.
For CBS Mornings, I'm Jonathan Vigliotti.
Okay. So let me shut that window out in case it wants to play another video. Sometimes they do that. But we're going to get started on the paperwork, the documents here. Basically, they're saying because of Dylan Mortensen giving different accounts of the story that night, and then they're trying to say that the police maybe like coerced her a little bit and showed her things and gave her maybe ideas on what to say. Maybe they did. I don't know. But I think when they were interviewing DM for the first time, they didn't know about Bryan Kohberger. So we got to remember that. They didn't know Bryan Kohberger had bushy eyebrows. They didn't know he was wearing a balaclava or whatever they're called. I think I'm saying that wrong. But they weren't aware of anything. All they had was DM and her statements. So I don't think there would have been time back then to coerce her to say something when you would just want the truth because you're trying to find the suspect at the time. You're not, you know what I mean? You don't have, it's not like they knew Bryan Kohberger was their man and they're like, oh, we got to get her, her to get a description of this guy because they didn't have that guy yet. So I don't get what, I don't get that. So, oh my gosh, on classic when there's so many documents, that's why we're doing a day live. Because the first one's 59 pages. We will go through them pretty quickly though. We only have a couple to go through. So that's, that's always good. I think there's just a couple. It's this one. Just make sure. Let's see. Is that the same? Yeah. Okay. We read through a lot last night. So we got a lot done. Let's enlarge this document here. So that way, if you want to read along, you can. And thanks for being here today, guys. I appreciate it. The state of Idaho, this is going to be for Bryan Kohberger. This is going to be the defense because it's in blue. All of the prosecution notes or documents will be in pink. And then all the courts will be in yellow. So at the top, all the documents are going to say Bryan, comes out Bryan through his attorney. We already know all that. But it says it's the state's response to defendant's motion to strike death penalty. Remember, they were trying to do the autism spectrum disorder. So they're doing the reply. Mr. Kohberger relies on his right to be free from cruel and unusual punishment, his right to due process, his right to a fair trial, his right to counsel, his right to present a defense, his right to a reliable sentencing determination, and other rights safeguarded by the 5th, 6th, 8th, and 14th Amendments to the United States Constitution and Article 1, Sections 1, 2, 6, 7, and 13 of the Idaho State Constitution. That was a mouthful. Mr. Kohberger incorporates herein defendant's response to state's motion in limine, and this is for the neuropsychological and psychiatric evidence that they gave. That response provides neuroimaging showing that ASD has both physical and biological factors. We looked it up, and it said online that you cannot do a brain scan and test for autism that way. So I don't know why they're talking about a brain scan and doing a brain scan if when we look online, it says, you can't do a brain scan and figure it out. Like figure out if you have ASD. Hey, Cindy, welcome in. My mom's name was Cindy. Right, Andy? Yeah, it's all about his rights. Yep. Unfortunately, it's going to be about his rights until, the end, which sucks. So they're going to go over the Atkins standard. So that's what you're going to hear that a lot. So the Atkins standard for intellectual disability is much more than a low IQ. Atkins versus Virginia, that's a 2002 case. Mr. Kohberger fits the criteria set forth in Atkins in the following ways. No, he does not. These are, you're going to hear a bunch of lies in this document. So they're trying to say that he has impairment in communication, reasoning, social skills, and understanding the reactions of others. Now, when he was in college, I think he was very well aware of his understanding the reactions of others. I think he did things on purpose to get a reaction out of others. His deficits developed at an early age and continue to the present day. I want to see documentation of that. ASD is not something one outgrows. Okay, so then we got this. Very early in his education, he was treated as a child with special needs, evaluated psychologically, and provided with instructional support. We have never heard that before, ever. He was observed as rocking in the classroom, inattentive, and he had poor fine motor skills. He received reading support, speech therapy, reminders to stay on task, more time for homework, and organizational support. That almost sounds to me like you got ADHD, buddy. He lacked social emotional reciprocity, I can't say that very well, and had few friends. Well, that's because no one liked him. He did not understand nonverbal communicative behaviors used for social interaction and had inability to develop, maintain, and understand relationships. The state seeks death when Mr. Kohberger is a person with an intellectual and neurodivergent physical disability. Like people with intellectual disabilities, Mr. Kohberger's adaptive functioning is impaired. He lacks the function in the real world of daily living, self-care, socialization, and communication. She's trying to say this guy can't take a bath on his own. She's trying to say that he cannot shave. He cannot put deodorant on. He don't know what clothes to wear. He don't know how to keep his house clean. That would be daily living. What? The dude vacuumed at 12 o'clock at night. What are you talking about? And self-care, look at him. Even when he was picked up, he was clean shaven. People with an IQ above 70 can still qualify as intellectually disabled due to a diminished adaptive function. Diminished adaptive function. And that's Hall versus Florida. That's a 2014 case. The DSM clearly states that intelligence is not a hedge against severe deficits in social functioning. Even those with average or high intelligence have an uneven profile of abilities. The gap between intellectual and adaptive functional skills is often large. The state is misguided in its argument that Mr. Kohberger has the least severe form of ASD in support of its position that his disability is not Atkins or Roper qualifying. And we'll probably find out that it's not. In United States versus Husef, the court dispelled the misconception among lay people that high-functioning or mild autism, terms used by researchers to denote individuals with average intelligence and communication skills, does not result in severe impairments. The court specifically, rejected the contention that the defendant's ASD is mild because he has a high IQ, had attended college, and could drive a car. Well, he could do a lot more than that. He could do a lot more than that. Are you trying to say he don't have common sense? Maybe that's what you're trying to say. That I'll believe. Houston had a full-scale IQ of 123, but despite his high IQ, the court stated Houston is severely impaired and in many areas functions at the level of an 8-year-old. The court considered evidence that demonstrate that the defendant struggled with daily living skills and socialization despite his high intelligence. What about the girls that he walked up to and asked for their phone number? What about the DJ that he talked to at the pool party? Talked his ear off. I mean, like, is she really for real? Hey, Misbehaving, how you doing? I was just reading the chat, sorry. Intelligence is not a hedge against severe impairment or of adaptive functional ability, the court stated. Another example of inappropriate reliance of a court on the term mild is from the Fourth Circuit in the United States versus Zook, and that was in 2017. The trial court's sentence was overturned on appeal and remanded largely because of Mr. Zook's autism being described in the record as mild autism, and the correlated failure to do adaptive testing, which would have illustrated the true degree to which Mr. Zook was impaired in relevant ways. The state relies on cases that do not address the facts in this case. Oh, my Lord, she is word salad. In Cities, U.S. versus Roof, 2021 case. At least they're citing cases that are like from this decade, which does not stand for the proposition that ASD is not included as falling under Atkins. In Roof, the court focused only on IQ as there was no full development of an intellectual disability. The state's reliance on Dunlap and Pizzitzio are equally misplaced as the issues related to mental disability were different. In Pizzitzio, the court hinged its decision on a lack of data before the age of 18, and there was no claim of ASD. And then Pizzitzio versus State. In Dunlap, the argument focused on mental illness and ASD was not a claim. Atkins stated 3 reasons why, in that case, capital punishment was inappropriate. Lesser culpability does not merit death. The death penalty does not act as a deterrent for the intellectually disabled, and impairments of intellectually disabled can jeopardize the fairness of their proceedings. These same factors apply in Mr. Kohberger's case. No, they do not. Lesser culpability. Oh my. We are not giving him lesser culpability because he's all of a sudden has autism. I don't care if he's had autism since he popped out of the damn womb. Autism does not give you the right to go into someone's home, allegedly, and unalive 4 college students and just go in the middle of the night. Burglary, 4 murders. Like, what? We all know what you want, Kohberger. You want life in prison. Well, you're not going to get it. I mean, I don't think you're going to get it, buddy. Unless you cop out to a deal or something. Lesser culpability. Mr. Kohberger has all times asserted his innocence. No, he has not. He has not asserted his innocence. He stood silent, Ann Taylor. There is a big difference, in my opinion, when you say, I am innocent, to where you say, I'm not saying a damn word to you, judge. And to me, that's very rude. To not say, I'm innocent. I plead not guilty. Should he be convicted of this crime, his neurological physical disorder may very well be the reason the jury misjudges him. The public sentiment of prejudice against him and prejudgment of guilt resulted in a change of venue. Well, that, and they wanted to get you off their back, I feel like. And I think Judge wasn't really qualified to take this case on. No offense to him, but the reality is that he is in fact in a category of persons who are less culpable. Oh my Lord. Where do you get into that? Where do you get into that stack? It is widely recognized that autism. Okay, so since I have autism, I'm going to go commit a bunch of crimes and then blame it on my autism. It is widely recognized that autism does not affect culpability, moral reasoning, and the ability to foresee consequences of social interaction and processes. Well, there we go. At least she's telling the truth. People with ASD face a childhood of victimization by their typically developing peers because they are misunderstood. No, not all the time. I had no problems with school. Inevitably, a misunderstanding is going to reprise itself in the courtroom, setting to the great disadvantage of the autistic accused facing typically developed jurors. Don't put him on trial, guys. He's just poor guy. He has autism, and he don't know right from wrong. Yes, he does. People, with autism, we do know right from wrong. And people with autism are usually very incredibly smart. So it says autism is a neurodevelopmental disability involving the brain. It is characterized by the presence of narrow repetitive behavior and differences and difficulties in social interaction, communication, and adjusting to change. A person suffering from ASD is neurologically impaired in his ability to appreciate the unacceptability of his conduct or to intuit why this conduct is unacceptable. Because of his difficulty observing social norms, an ASD individual may engage in socially disapproved or unacceptable behavior with no consequence of wrongdoing or a real sense of how his behavior is viewed by others. Now, when he was touching the girl, tickling her and such, that could be that was kind of weird. So, I mean, that was kind of like a behavior that may not be acceptable. But the same factors bearing on the juvenile's mental development and appreciation of his wrongdoing are present in the case of a defendant with ASD. Shore, like others with ASD, shares the same characteristics with juveniles whom the Supreme Court has found are constitutionally different from adults for purposes of sentencing. Miller versus Alabama. These include immaturity, impulsivity, and failure to appreciate the risk and consequences of their actions. The same analysis applies here. Hey, oopsie. When I see that, I like that green, it just makes my head go that way because it's just so bright. You are smart, Ashley. Yes, indeed. I want to go back over those. So we went over those, but I want to go over those. Like, I want to see why, Dylan was doing this, why Kohberger was doing that, why Kaylee had this account. I want to know it all. And I want to go over, I want to do a timeline over it. Like his vehicle traveling, because they do have a bunch of surveillance now. And I wanted to map that out for you guys. Because I'm a visual person. And oopsie, thank you for being a member for so long. 19 months. I gotta get more little titanium arms for you guys. So the next one here is death penalty as a deterrent. It is well known that the death penalty is no deterrent at all. That is the reason that many states have eliminated it. It is not a deterrent for anyone. Moreover, the state argues that the death penalty does not act as a deterrent for the intellectually disabled because they cannot process the possibility of execution as a penalty, and declares that this does not apply in the case of autism. To the contrary, autism is often conceptualized as an executive functioning disorder. Part of executive functioning is the ability to foresee consequences and adjusting behavior to optimize one's course of action to obtain beneficial and avoid negative consequences. Mr. Kohberger suffers from executive function deficiency, such as disorganization and inability to plan ahead. No, he doesn't. Don't try to say he doesn't. He's organized. He was so organized that his apartment was so clean when he went on his trip to his dad's house. His apartment would have been a mess. They said when they walked in, there was barely anything in there and it was all tidy. And what about disorganization? He was putting his trash into baggies. That could be organization. Impairment of intellectual disability. Mr. Kohberger does have a diminished ability to understand and process information. No, he doesn't. To learn from experience, to engage in logical reasoning or control impulses. As explained in the expert reports, he has poor working memory, engages in repetitive behaviors, and poor impulse control. His neurological divergence is supported in neuroimaging. Person with ASD make poor witnesses. Research show that if a jury is not informed of the defendant's diagnosis of ASD, the impact of the negative impressions of demeanor may have a detrimental implication for defendants with ASD. Perlin and Coculio emphasize the need for protections in these areas because the operation of autistic traits makes it much more difficult for individuals with ASD in the criminal justice system, especially when their fate is to be decided by jurors who may have either no familiarity with autism or whose familiarity is based on a television stereotype and who regularly considers demeanor evidence. That's it. Sorry. So Mr. Kohberger's ASD makes a fair and just trial a challenge. Like, what are they? Right, Rhonda? Doesn't earn a master's or equate to the PhD program. Yeah, you would not get that far in life. If it was that bad, you know. The state argues news coverage is not informative on this topic. Well, because we just found out about his autism. The state benefits from the biased news media. Public sentiment is that Mr. Kohberger's physical presentation makes him look guilty through no fault of his own. His flat effect, intense gaze, awkward body posture, holding still in the courtroom, inability to react and process what is happening in the courtroom, and inability to show emotion could cause enough juror bias to convict him. That's because he doesn't care. In my opinion, I don't think it's autism. I think he just does not care. That's why he's not shaken in the courtroom. Without a doubt, his ability to testify in trial and the decision to testify will be nearly impossible for Mr. Kohberger. He has no ability to perceive what will it feel like and whether he should in fact testify. So he can't make a decision on whether or not to testify. His inability to read the room, understand the threat that cross-examination will present, or explain himself in socially acceptable way without prosody of speech presents insurmountable hurdles for him. That's what you're there for, Ann Taylor. You're there to tell him if you think it's a good idea, if he testifies or not, and then you coach him, not like coach him, but you practice the questions and what his answers would be. Now, cross-examination, you can't do much for that. You know, if they got one on him, they get one on him. But you can't say that he can't testify. He has the inability to testify. The state picked fragments of sentences in the expert reports to support its position that Mr. Kohberger does not present with ASD challenges. In doing so, the state could not be more wrong in comparing Mr. Kohberger's ability to testify in a courtroom to the average person. He suffers from multiple vulnerabilities, impacting first deciding whether or not to testify and then competently testifying, with no ability to eliminate the physical conditions that exist within his body due to his neurodivergence. He fits exactly the Atkins typical poor witness. Typical poor witness. Thank you, Oopsie, for gifting a membership. That's very kind. And Andy got it. Look at that. And Andy's in the chat. I love it when people are in the chat and they get it. All these, yes, Triple L, and good morning to you. Yeah, or good afternoon now. Hey, get the ducking point. Right? You have to have that. You're gonna have to have some medical paperwork to I want to see it all. I want to see, because he hasn't, there's no HIPAA for him right now. They call it in all the time. They call in stuff all the time. So I hope that they do. Hey, CJK. Hey, Tony. He's a runner, kickboxer. Yeah. Like, get the fuck out of here. Yeah. Right. He's done so much. He was able to lose weight and keep his mind focused in order to do that. He was able, we said in the chat, he was able to go ahead and get his master, his bachelor's, his associates, right? We're going to start at the beginning. He graduated high school, got his associates, got his bachelor's, got his master's, going for his PhD. He ain't a typical poor witness. The failure of the police or the court to consider the extent to which the appearance of the accused is accounted for by his autism has resulted in reversals on pure evidentiary sufficiency grounds. And it says, United States versus Control. We don't need to read all that, I don't think. No. Okay. Finally, the state argues that Mr. Kohberger is competent for that reason. Atkins does not apply. Competence is consistently being assessed, and the reason Dr. Ryan's report refers to the issue is because his ASD impacts his ability to assist counsel and understand the proceedings he faces. Now, he could just be standing there being bold, like just quiet. This can all be an act. I mean, I thought this was all an act since the beginning. Really, I thought he was just stoic, I guess you would say. He has an inability to assist with mitigation evidence and understand the magnitude of his case. So he doesn't know the magnitude of his case. By way of example, when he was arrested in his home with a full SWAT team, doors broken, and parents zip-tied, he made small talk with the detective in the back of the car during the ride to the police station. Well, why wouldn't you make small talk? What'd you say, Kohberger? He asked the officer about his education and suggested that they get coffee at a later date. Oh my God, no, he didn't. No, he didn't. No, he didn't, guys. No, he didn't. Can you imagine? Right, you're riding in the back of the patrol car and you're talking to the cop about going to get a cup of coffee. Maybe I don't think it's ASD. I think it's something else. I think he has no concept of, like, he just doesn't care. I don't think this is autism. Like, he talked about his education and suggested get a coffee at a later date. He did not perceive the profoundly serious nature of the moment and exhibited no perception of what was happening. I don't think he cared. While competency has not been raised in this case, at the time, Mr. Kohberger's team and assisting experts are consistently analyzing this issue. Conclusion: for all the reasons addressed above in Mr. Kohberger's initial brief, the death penalty must be struck as a possible penalty in this case. The court has notified the parties that 15 minutes will be allowed on this motion. No, it will not be allowed. What is she talking about? Why does she say that things like it's going to happen? The judge is the person that says when there's going to be a motion allowed. She says the court has notified the parties that 15 minutes will be allowed on this motion. This is a matter that requires an evidentiary hearing with expert testimony. Mr. Kohberger will continue to pursue this legal issue throughout the trial if this motion is denied. Given his disability, a jury should never be allowed to consider putting him to death. Get the hell out of here, Ann Taylor. I don't think we're going to read through this one. No, this is all about this other guy. Yeah, I went through it and it has all of this right here. All of this has nothing. Not one time do they mention Bryan Kohberger and all of this shit. And I read through all of it. I didn't read through this, I don't think. This is just another one. This is just another case. She's just doing the case examples. This right here, if I was a judge, I'd be like, get the hell out of here. Just give me the case name. I know what the case probably is. I know the basis around the case, it's crazy. Hey, Willows. Hey, Jerry. Welcome on in, guys. Yeah, get to ducking point. I feel like it. Hey, baby girl. It's been a while since I've seen you. Welcome in. How is he in criminal justice? So the thing is, when you're a criminal, this is my personal opinion. I went to school for criminal justice. So I'm not a criminal, so don't take it this as me. But I think that criminals are more like they're infatuated with the process. Do you know what I mean? Just like we are in a way. But I think they are a little more so. And I think he truly wanted to get in with the police so that he could be looking at the evidence through a police eye, and he would be able to get away with crimes. Who was that? That was an officer. What's his name? Wasn't it BTK? That was like an officer of the courts or something. He was an officer of something. Me too, Ashley. But we wouldn't go out and hurt somebody. Hey, Debbie. I believe that in us. Unless someone mess with our family, then all bets are off. And thanks again for being here, guys. I appreciate it so much. Oh, he was a church deacon. Who was the guy that he might have been a cop too. He might have had some sort of badge for something. Oh no, he's really been on Ann's case. Like he hasn't let her like he's been denying a lot of stuff with her, and I was very surprised. So I'm pretty excited about this judge. Judge was letting her get away with a lot of stuff, in my opinion. Okay, so we'll go ahead and we'll read this one. And this one is in reply to Nolan and Touch and Contact DNA. Kohberger buying through his attorney's record, we got to hear that. The state's objection is that the use of the term touch DNA will not mislead the jury, that Nolan's testimony on how the DNA was placed on Q1.1 is proper expert testimony, and that despite Nolan's opinion being the state's theory, it is a proper rebuttal to the testimony of defense expert Dr. Ruth Ballard. Mr. Kohberger will address each objection in order. Okay. I'm assuming Q1.1 is going to be the knife sheath. Now, I'm wondering what is Q1? What's Q1 then? I'm wondering. In Mr. Kohberger's MIL number 6, at 3 through 8, he sets forth in detail the history of the use of the terms touch and contact, DNA, and the growing concern with the use of those words, so much that a recent report from NIST offered the recommendation that analysts should not offer opinions as to how and when the particular DNA sample came to be on an object. They are not. The state's not objecting to that. They're not saying they know when exactly Bryan Kohberger touched the knife sheath. They're just saying that his DNA is on the knife sheath through touched DNA because they received skin cells. So that's why they think it's touched DNA. The state's opposition argues that the only purpose of the word or the use of the word touch in the context of DNA is to distinguish between samples that collected from known or visible stains such as blood, saliva, and semen, and DNA that may be deposited on an item by handling or wearing. What this argument fails to consider, and Mr. Kohberger forcibly explains, the use of the word touch in the context of DNA implies a fact that is not known, that the DNA was in fact deposited via touching the object. The implication of the word is the issue, not the description of the type of sample or the means that DNA can transfer through the environment. A close reading of Nolan's now 3 disclosures shows the inherent problem with the use of the word touch and the lack of any need to use that term. So are you saying that Bryan Kohberger's DNA, his particles were in the air and somebody opened the knife sheath at that same time and his particles went into the knife sheath? Come on now. Into the button snap and nowhere else? He touched it. Come on. A close reading of Nolan's, I already read that, sorry. In her first disclosure, S through 11, Nolan describes the ways in which DNA can move in the environment using language such as direct, indirect transfer without the use of the word touch, except to describe the action of a person actually touching an item and transferring DNA. In the March 3rd, 2025 disclosure, S17, Nolan for the first time uses the word touch DNA as a descriptor and not a verb. At number two, if the court simply removed the word touch from the disclosure, the description of the concepts laid out would not suffer and would be as clear as the earlier similar descriptions in S7. Nolan seems to switch between using the word touch in reference to describing a type of DNA, indicating that it is not necessary to offer a cognate description of the process of transfer laid out in her disclosures. The state cites a single case for the proposition that experts in other cases have used the phrase touch DNA. This case is from 2016 and discussing the availability of technology to test the touch DNA in the time frame from 2007 to 2012. In further support, the state offers a single article which references sampling methods for touch DNA. It ignores the articles cited by Mr. Kohberger, which are reviews of the literature. These reviews cover in total over 300 scientific articles as compared to the single article presented in the state's opposition. So she's saying that she has 300 scientific articles that are saying that the use of the word touch DNA in court is just not, it's not good. It's not proper anymore. Let's see. let's see. While touch DNA is a common term, it's generally misleading and should be avoided in courtroom settings. So maybe they need to do that. It says the preferred term are trace DNA or low copy number DNA. Well, they could just say trace DNA, I'm sure, right? It says the term is also an indication that the DNA evidence tested may have been very low as starting quantity, as it's just a few cells. In all of these instances, the proper term is trace DNA or even low copy number DNA. So maybe she'll say that in her opposition here, or her motions. Where are we? Okay. Finally, the state offers Nolan's statement that the term is typically used. The state does not present any documents, peer-reviewed journal articles, or other materials that advocate for the use of the term touch or contact in reference to DNA samples taken from an item where the lab did not see an obvious body fluid stain and did nothing to determine the presence of any possible biological source. Nolan's affidavit offers no support to the necessity of using the term touch DNA other than to state that it is a term that is widely used. Nowhere does she point to any references that support that position, that this is the only means available to describe the type of sample that is being tested. You're just wanting to change stuff just to change stuff. Like, stop being Uncle Ben's. As is clear from her previous disclosure, she is very clearly and concisely describes transfer as a concept without using the term. None of this is convincing and does nothing to rebuke the peer review opinions of the author cited by Mr. Kohberger, and the use of the terms can be misleading and suggest a mode of action which is unknown. The use of the descriptors touch and contact DNA are not necessary to the description of transfer laid out in Nolan's disclosure and would only mislead and confuse the jury and require a significant consumption of time and cross-examination to prove a point that the state seems to concede. That the use of the word is not intended to imply the how of the DNA on Q1.1. Well, it's not. Like, they're just saying his skin cells were on the knife sheath. So B, the opinion of how the transfer of DNA to Q1.1 is not proper expert testimony. To rebuke the citation to the research on the topic of transfer and analyst ability to assess transfer in a particular case, the state offered a brief conclusory affidavit from Nolan. This affidavit does nothing to assure or assist the court in coming to a decision. As stated in MIL number 6, the court intends to offer Nolan's opinion that the DNA found on Q1.1 is from direct contact, despite acknowledging that current DNA technology cannot conclusively answer the question of when DNA was deposited on an item or by what mechanism. Nolan essentially places her subjective personal opinion in direct contradiction that the technology used cannot answer that question. This type of opinion and testimony is exactly the type of misleading testimony that the EWG group was concerned about. Idaho Rules of Evidence 702, 703, 403 govern the inadmissibility of expert testimony. As set forth in MIL number 6, Mr. Kohberger objects to the specific testimony of Nolan regarding her opinion that the DNA found on Q1.1 is more likely the result of direct transfer. So he's objecting. He's saying that's not direct transfer. A qualified expert may testify in the form of an opinion only if their specialized knowledge will assist the tier of fact to understand the evidence or determine a fact and issue. Because a verdict cannot rest on speculation or conjecture, expert opinion, which is speculative, conclusory, or unsubstantiated by facts and records, is no assistance to the jury in rendering its verdict, and therefore inadmissible as evidence under Rule 702. Nolan is not an expert in transfer. So the first question for the court is whether Nolan has the proper expertise to proffer an opinion on how the DNA arrived on the sheath. As set forth in Mr. Kohberger's MIL number 6, 4 through 8, the expertise for how and when opinions require a different type of expertise that exceeds that of the standard training and expertise of a DNA lab analyst. Nowhere in its reply does the state address the question of Nolan's expertise in this area, nor does Nolan in her affidavit. Not mentioned by Nolan in her affidavit is the recommendation of EWG. And then a close review of Nolan's experience shows that she has no specialized training or experiences in the area of transfer. Her CV attached to Decel 12/18/24 states, I'm assuming S is states exhibits 21, lists no substantive training in the area of transfer. It appears that she may have attended some presentations at the American Academy of Forensic Science meeting in February 2025, but she provides no details regarding the presentation she attended, despite the fact that the materials are available online. None of her presentations or publications involve transfer, and she has pointed to no research or experience she has in the area of transfer to substantiate her ability to offer an opinion on the how and when of the DNA in this case. While Nolan may be qualified to testify about DNA testing, she is not competent or qualified to offer an opinion regarding the specific evidence in this case. Okay. Okay, Anne. Opinions of Nolan direct transfer is speculative and not founded in sufficient facts. The Idaho courts have long held the speculative expert testimony inadmissible. Testimony is speculative when it theorizes about a matter as to which the evidence is not sufficient for certain knowledge. An opinion that is speculative suggests only possibilities that may be properly excluded, since the opinion would not assist the tier of fact. Expert testimony will assist the tier of fact when the reasoning of methodology underlying the opinion is scientifically sound. In determining whether expert testimony is admissible, the court must evaluate the expert ability to explain pertinent scientific principles and to apply those principles to the formulation of his or her opinion. Well, if she works in the crime lab, I'm sure she is an expert at DNA and such. So, while the court must distinguish scientifically sound reasoning from that of the self-validating expert whose scientific terminology to present unsubstantiated personal beliefs, it may not substitute its judgment for that of the relevant scientific community. Okay. Here, Nolan presents an opinion that the Idaho Supreme Court specifically warns against a personal belief presented as a possibility without any scientific basis to support the opinion. In response to Mr. Kohberger's Mills number 6, the state filed a short affidavit from Nolan reasserting without any factual or scientific support that there is not a consensus in the forensic community that DNA lab analysts should not opine about DNA transfer, persistence, and recovery. I agree with that. In support of this argument, Nolan points to the dissent of two of the EWG members to the recommendations from the EWG that analysts not present these opinions. However, the statement by Nolan is incomplete and misleading. While Nolan is correct in that 2 of the 25 members dissented, that their dissent is not supported of Nolan's position because they, like all the other EWG members, agree that this type of testimony can be misleading and otherwise problematic. Okay. I'm trying to see where we need to start reading it. Okay. This objection is not an endorsement of this type of testimony. Rather, it voices concerns that essentially there is no adequate training or system in place to support the scientific validity of how and when opinion. That doesn't make sense, but Nolan next points to the lack of consensus within the forensic DNA community on the use of this type of testimony. However, this is more argument than fact. Nolan asserts that the other side of the debate believes that not offering an opinion based on knowledge or molecular biology / DNA, when it may aid the tier of fact, is unethical, and that there were presentations on both sides of the argument at a recent meeting in the American Academy of Sciences. So was Ann Taylor at this American Academy of Sciences? Because she sure knows a lot about it. Nolan does not provide the identities of the community she cites for support or any article or presentation that supports her statements. Nor does she explain how ethical norms are being violated or that there are ethical guidelines that support this contention. Nolan now presented no scientific arguments or research to the topic that supports her opinions, as is demanded by Idaho law and so clearly stated in Ryan Supra. The inadmissibility of expert opinion testimony depends on the expert's ability to explain pertinent scientific principles and how to apply these principles to the formulation of his or own opinion. Thus, the key to admission of the opinion is the validity of the expert's reasoning and methodology. Even in a signed affidavit, Nolan can produce no scientific principles that apply to the formulation of her opinion, and she has offered this court no reason based on her opinion other than two bare facts. The court needs to consider carefully her full opinion. Many complicated factors can influence the likelihood of transferred DNA and the persistence of the transferred DNA after deposition. Current DNA technology cannot conclusively answer the question of when DNA was deposited on an item or by what mechanism. It is possible DNA detected on M2022-4843, item 1.1, resulted from secondary transfer. However, based on Nolan's training and experience, it is her opinion, given the quantity of DNA detected on M2022-4843, item 1.1, and given the DNA profile obtained is single source, is more likely the result of a direct transfer. Okay, so it says, why are we seeing this number now? Because we were just reading Q 1.1, and now we've got this. So is this another item that had his DNA on it? First, Nolan explains that there are many complicated factors affecting the transfer of DNA, states the current technology cannot conclusively answer the question on the how and when of transfer, explains the DNA on the item Q1.1 could possibly be due to indirect transfer, but that her own personal training and experience led her to the conclusion that the DNA is more likely due to direct transfer. Thank you, Cindy, for the super sticker. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. So she's saying that it's not, she's trying to say it was blowing in the wind. I mean, this is insanity. Nolan essentially offers the court and ultimately the jury a confusing opinion that the science does not allow for conclusive determination of how and when of transfer, and that both scenarios, direct and indirect transfers, are possible, but she believes that the direct transfer is more likely. This opinion cannot be more speculative. An opinion that is speculative suggests only possibilities that may be properly excluded, since the opinion would not assist the tier of fact. So if she said, I believe that this was just blowing in the wind, this DNA, Ann Taylor would be cool with that. But since she is saying she believes that this is a result of direct transfer, and I'm assuming it's because of the amount of cells that they found on the item, because if it's just blowing in the wind, it's not going to be a huge chunk of like cells. Do you know what I mean? And I believe that's what they got. I don't believe they got a lot of cells, but I believe they got like a large portion in one area. This opinion would be helpful to a jury and would tend to confuse and mislead the jury. Nolan only offers possibilities based on no substantive scientific principles, and which flies in the face of science that Nolan herself agrees with. That this type of opinion cannot be conclusively determined. Mr. Kohberger would be prejudiced by this speculative opinion, and substantially court time would be consumed in the cross-examination and impeachment of this witness and this opinion, and therefore the opinion should be excluded. She believes that they would be impeached. Mr. Kohberger's motion to exclude the use of the words touch and contact DNA, as well as the opinion of Nolan regarding of how and when the DNA should be excluded. So she wants everything out. Let's see. She wants the use of the term murder, the use of the term psychopath, sociopath, the use of the identification of bushy eyebrows. She wants his click activity taken away. The model and make of his vehicle, she wants that off of there, because she said the 1112, camera was saying a different year. She wants the autism spectrum disorder put in. She wants the touch and contact DNA to not be said. I mean, the woman she wants a lot. The other two things that the defendants filed were just seals, and then defendant's motion to file reply under seal. So those two things are just like, those two documents are just really short. I won't read those ones to you. They're not extremely important, but I thought we would end the live out with this because I think this is extremely important. It says, Kohberger's family members of Bryan Kohberger may be called to testify according to court filings. This is what we were reading the other day. Prosecutors say the family members of the man accused in the stabbing deaths of 4 University of Idaho students may be called to testify and should not be allowed in the courtroom during other witness testimony. That's usually how they do it, except for in Alec Murdaugh's case. They let Buster sit through the whole thing. The prosecution originally filed a motion in February asking the court to allow the immediate family members of the victims to be in the courtroom regardless of when they are scheduled to testify. The defense team for Bryan Kohberger, the man charged in the quadruple murder, objected to the motion in the March filing. Kohberger's defense argued that Kohberger's parents and his two sisters should be allowed to be in the courtroom for the trial if the victim's family members are permitted. Well, we don't disagree with that. The defense also argued that if the victim's family members were allowed to be present, they should be directed not to wear clothing or other apparel with any kind of memorial language or images that could be observed by and sway a jury. On February and March 21st, the prosecution filed a response to the defendant's objection, arguing that families of homicide victims have constitutional and statutory rights to attend and the related trial, but family members of defendants do not have the same rights. And I didn't know that. The prosecution also details that they may call family members of Kohberger's family to testify at the trial and would ask the court, if the court does not do so already, that witness be excluded from the courtroom before they testify so that they do not hear other witness testimony. The prosecution list of who they plan to call to testify at the trial is due by April 21st. So we will get that in about a month. And we'll see who's going to be testifying, who's not going to be. I mean, I'm excited. Making me happy, we're actually getting, we're getting answers. We're getting information about this case. We have all waited for over 2 years. I can't imagine being the family members of any of these victims. I would have clawed out my eyes by now. I mean, I would have scratched out my eyes. I would have I wouldn't be as cool as they've been at all, at all. I mean, even Steve Gonzalez, he has his moments where his voice, gets a little high. But if that was me, it would be way worse. I'd be way worse. But tonight, if I do come on, I think I'm going to come on. Because we usually do our lives at 9:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every night. We have, how many things do we have for the state? Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. 17 Word documents to go through. I'm going to go through them and just pick out the ones that are the most, that have the most information. And then we will go over some more of those this evening. It's a lot of documents, though. I don't think the parents have been treated well either, Triple L. I really don't. Hey, Amy. Yeah, it's the phone activity. I don't know. I was really rallying for GM and the 8 hours that she slept, and now that she wasn't sleeping, it's like, what the heck were you doing? But maybe some people go on with life. Do you know what I mean? That's hard to say, but they'll keep going with the motions. Do you know what I mean? Like, they really know something's going on. They have a feeling something happened, but they don't want to know. So they just continue with their own life. You know what I mean? Does that make sense to you guys? But for them to both call their parents, they had to have said something to their parents. And their parents had to have said, well, go up and check or call the police or something, right? So maybe that is what happened. Maybe they were talking about it. They fell asleep. I think they did go to sleep for a couple hours because there was no activity on the phones. And then maybe they woke up and that's when they decided to call Hunter over. Hey, True Crime Lullabies. What'd Ashley say? Ooh. 6 months since Lane, really? Oh, Ashley, that's amazing. I hope that you're calm and everything, but I hope that the waters are calm and just listen to some music, get out there on the water, because that's where you're supposed to be. You were meant to be on the water. I just don't understand how that water all got to you. Yeah, that part of them didn't want to know. Yeah, I really do. I think that they just didn't want to know. Afraid to know, denial. Exactly. I've went over this before. My dad was killed in a car accident, and I was about, I'd say 10 cars behind. Probably not even that many cars, actually, in reality. But far enough back to where I didn't see his vehicle. Thank the Lord. But I took another way home that night. When I got home, it was 11 o'clock. My mom said, your dad's not home. And as soon as she said that, I knew what happened. I knew that accident had to do with him because my dad was always home by 3:30, 4 o'clock. And that day, he had went out to get pool chemicals. It was like 7 o'clock, 6 o'clock to get pool chemicals. And then he stopped by a friend's house. And he never does that. He never did that, ever. He didn't have friends. But that's why he was coming home so late. And I remember going back to sleep. I kept going back to sleep. Like, as soon as my mom said that, I walked in my room. I got ready for bed, just like I normally would. And I went to bed. And then there were sheriffs and cops banging on my window and on the side of the house because they knew which room was mine. I grew up beside one of them. And I had to tell my mom, but I didn't want to. I kept going back to sleep. I went back to sleep like 3 times. And I'm not going to lie, it was like the best sleep of my life. Because it was like my brain was allowing me to just not think of anything. Like, it was literally like there was nothing up in my brain. It was just empty brain. But yeah, it was just, it was nuts. My mom didn't believe me when I told her. That was the worst thing I ever had to do. You should never have to tell your mom her husband's dead. Of 30 years, no, I don't recommend that. I don't wish that on anybody. But we got through it, me and her did, and I was always with her. We were always together. I miss her dearly. She was a saint. One of these days I'll have to tell you more about her. I think I'm going to do a video on my second channel of little like tips. I got to think of them because it's been a while since my mom passed, but my mom was always giving me like little tips and stuff and tricks, and they're really good. They're really good tips. So I want to like give them to you guys. You may know what they are already, but I feel like it'd be a fun live to do. So, but thanks for being here today. I appreciate you guys so very much. If you guys haven't, hit the like button for your girl. It does help the channel grow. It gets me out into the algorithm. I would love it, love it, love it. We only have 53 likes. If we can get up to 100, I know that's a lot, but I think we can do it. We have 83 people in here. So I'll be back on tonight around 8:15 or 9:15 to read more documents to you guys. I'm going to let my girls out. They're actually, oh my gosh, they're sleeping like babies. They're sleeping so good. Yes, Amy, you're exactly right. No one knows how they react to trauma until they experience it. Yeah, you're right. And thank you guys for being here today. I appreciate you guys so much. I will throw in the link to become a member because I forgot to do that the whole live. But if you'd like to become a member, we'd love to have you. And I will see you guys all tonight later on the live. Have a wonderful day. Bye, guys.
Just like the street lights lit this town, like a fire in a blaze, gotta burn it down. Can't be afraid to leave this out.